How do you mute down a color when you're working with watercolor? And what does muting a color down really even mean? And why is it that when we use colors straight out of the pen or tube, our end results are usually not very realistic and maybe even flat? When you hear the words mute down or desaturate or subdue or neutralize, they're usually referring to the same thing, which means to lower the intensity or purity or saturation or chroma or vividness of any given color. And as painters, it is incredibly important that we know how to make paint colors less vivid, less intense, for a variety of reasons that I'm going to be sharing in the first part of today's video. In this video, I'm going to be sharing must-know information on color theory and the color wheel that you should definitely be aware of if you're just getting started on your journey with painting. But even if you're farther ahead but are still having trouble with color mixing, this one is for you. I've organized this video into 3 parts. In part 1, I'm going to explain what muting down a color means and the reasons why it is so important that you know how to mute down colors as a painter. In part 2, I explain must-know information on color theory. And in part 3, I am sharing essential exercises that I would recommend exploring yourself with the paint colors that you have at home in order to truly get a handle of color mixing and understanding the strategies for muting down colors even more. Because it's only through doing and experiencing these things firsthand that you're actually going to gain that confidence so that you can apply this knowledge in your paintings and just create better results. All right, everyone, let's jump in. Let's just briefly talk about why it is so important to know how to desaturate or tone down or mute down colors. The first reason being that if you're going for any level of realism, most colors around us in real life are desaturated or muted to different degrees. At least this is the case when you're talking about natural organic objects. There are a few exceptions, of course, like brightly colored flowers and things like that, but it's a very small amount of highly saturated objects in the grand scheme of things. And even when it comes to man-made objects which have been dyed and colored in unnatural colors, the colors that we see in different objects are always going to be affected by the environment that the object is in. Different environmental factors such as lighting have a huge impact on the colors that we see. And so as painters, we want to be able to shift the color temperature, shift values, so that when we're painting different objects, they can actually seem like they are adequately fitting in the environment that we are painting. And this is why when you're just using colors straight out of the pen or tube to create your pieces, you end up with results that are not very realistic. Because most colors straight out of the pen or tube, except for a few, and of course the neutrals, browns and grays, are highly saturated. If you don't give thought to saturation and value or tone when you are choosing your colors and creating your color mixtures, you're likely going to end up with unnatural, flat-looking results. I've created another video that I shared some time ago where I talk about the difference between hue, value, and saturation. I would highly recommend checking that out if you haven't already, because I explain what the difference is between these 3 properties of color. I'll make sure to link to that video down below. Another important reason why knowing how to create more muted colors is important is simply because we want to create balanced looking pieces, right? And this goes for any type of art, whether you're into high levels of realism or abstract pieces or anything in between, because this will lead to more interesting, well-balanced compositions. It's good to use a combination of more muted colors with more saturated colors. Think about it. If all of the colors that you're using in your piece are super muted, then nothing is really going to pop. Everything is going to kind of blend visually together because you're not creating any contrast using color saturation. On the other hand, if
all of the colors that you're using throughout your composition are highly saturated colors, everything is going to be screaming at the viewer at once. Whereas if you plan for a balance and maybe use more saturated colors in the focal point area or in a few little spots that you want to make pop, and combine those saturated colors with less saturated colors that are more muted or grayed down, these colors are going to complement each other, play off each other, and you're going to end up with something that is more well balanced. When a lot of us get started with watercolor, we accidentally create these brownish or grayish color mixtures that we weren't necessarily intending to create for one reason or another. Maybe we're mixing too many colors together, maybe we're layering too many colors on, especially those with opaque qualities, and we arrive at these colors that we automatically classify as undesired and muddy. At the end of the day, it all comes down to control, whether you actually were intending to create a desaturated color or not. In the beginning, a lot of us are lacking knowledge on color theory and also control over our painting medium, and it's just a matter of developing your skill in both areas. And finally, the third reason is because you want to, as an artist, always use the elements of art, color, shape, line, texture, etc., strategically and intentionally to communicate a specific mood, message, idea, or story. More muted colors are going to communicate a different vibe or mood when compared to more saturated colors. And as artists, we're always trying to transmit, if not a message or narrative, at least a specific mood or vibe. And by strategically making use of the elements of art, we're going to be able to communicate that more effectively. Color is an incredibly powerful element of art that can help us transmit what we're looking to transmit more effectively, and I think that as artists, the more we're able to strategically use the different elements of art, color, shape, line, texture, etc., the more our artwork will improve. So if you're still avoiding doing any planning at all before jumping into a new piece, and you're still choosing colors out of whim as you're moving along throughout your drawing or painting process, I would highly recommend taking at least 5 to 10 minutes to plan out your colors, and not only is your process going to be easier, but you're going to arrive at much better results. I have full tutorials where I talk about how I choose my different colors for the results that I'm after. I have other videos where I explain my thumbnailing process and how I design my compositions. I'll make sure to link to some of those down below so that you can get started on the right foot. Alright, so let's talk about the color wheel and color theory for just a bit here so that you know why I pick the colors that I'm going to be mixing in the next part of this video. I have shared other videos on color theory and the color wheel before with helpful exercises, which I'll make sure to link to down below in the text section of this post. I even have a video on color temperature and how to tell warm colors from cool colors. So there are 3 primary colors, right? We have red, yellow, and blue. Primary colors in this color wheel that I am sharing on screen are pointed out by the gray triangle. As you can see, this is an equilateral triangle, which means that all 3 sides are the same, which tells us that these 3 colors are sitting equally distanced apart in the color wheel with 3 colors in between them. And essentially, all of the other colors in the color wheel, both the secondaries and the tertiaries, can be created by mixing primary colors together. How warm or cool or how vibrant or desaturated those color mixtures turn out to be does of course depend on the primary colors that you have chosen to create that color mixture with. And of course, the ratios or the amounts of the colors in your mixture are also going to lead to different results. Different primaries, whether you're choosing warm primaries, cool primaries, or a combination, are going to lead to different results. But let's keep this really simple and let's go with the idea that you can create any color that you want if you have those 3 primary colors: red, yellow, and blue. Secondary colors, which are pointed out here by the black triangle, are green, orange, and purple. They sit right in between the three primary colors and are babies, if you will, of two primaries. You create purple by mixing together blue and red. You create green by mixing together blue and yellow, and you can create orange by mixing together yellow and red. And tertiary colors are colors like blue-green, yellow-orange, red-orange, blue-purple, and so on and so forth, which are babies of a primary and a secondary, sitting in between one primary and one secondary. The baby is always in between the parents which created it. Now, the way that I like to see it is the purest, most highly saturated version of each of these colors in the color wheel are along the outer edges of the wheel. And the closer and closer you get to the center of the wheel, the more desaturated or neutralized those colors become. Consider the paint color straight out of the pen or tube as being the most highly saturated, purest version of that color. And once you start mixing other colors into it, it becomes more desaturated or more muted and gets closer and closer to the center of the wheel. If you mix together the three primaries, red, yellow, and blue, you're going to get a neutralized, desaturated color that is going to look more like gray or brown, depending on the three primaries that you're mixing together, and of course, the amounts of each primary that you're adding into the mixture. But you're always going to end up with a highly muted brownish grayish color if you mix the three primaries together. You can see those dark neutrals as being in the center of the wheel. If you mix together analogous colors, meaning colors that are next to each other in the color wheel, you're going to notice that your color mixtures are not as desaturated or muted when compared to mixing together two complementary colors, meaning opposites in the color wheel. Colors that are opposite to each other in the color wheel will mute each other down. Why? Because the color sitting opposite or right in front of any other color in the color wheel contains or is made up of the other two primaries. And as I said before, if you mix the three primaries together, you're going to get a brown. So just as an example, let's just say I pick the yellow, right? And opposite to yellow, we have purple. Purple contains red and blue, which are the other two primaries aside from yellow. So you're actually mixing the three primaries together when you're combining yellow and purple. Let's do another example here, and let's actually use a couple of tertiary colors for this exercise. Let's just say that I'm going to combine red-orange with blue-green, which is its complementary color. Red-orange has red and yellow in it, and blue-green has blue and yellow in it, meaning you're actually mixing together the three primaries once again. So whatever set of opposing or complementary colors you choose to go with or mix together, you're actually mixing the three primary colors together. To different degrees, of course, but still, bringing in just a bit of the three primaries together is still going to lead to neutralized results. And it is important to mention here that the same way that you can add more of the colors complementary to mute down or desaturate the first color, you can also add in more of the first color that you want to make more prominent and more vibrant to make the color mixture less desaturated. All right, so let's jump into the two main ways that you can desaturate or mute down colors when working with watercolor. One of these ways is by mixing in a bit of the colors complementary, and another way is to mix in a neutral into your base color. So right here I have prepared a watercolor sheet where I'm going to be mixing together a couple of different red and green combos, a couple of different blue and orange combos, and a couple of different yellow and purple combos. I wanted to demo more than one single color combination because, again, the temperature of the colors that you're choosing have a huge impact on the end results. But you're going to notice that even though the hue, the colors look different, by combining complementary colors, you'll always end up with a muted looking color. First, I am demoing what alizarin crimson plus viridian green looks like. Alizarin crimson is a cool red and viridian green is a cool green. So as you can see, I end up with a grayish, very dark color when I mix these two together. And obviously, the more of the colors complementary you add into the mixture, the more muted that initial color becomes. By combining complementary colors, you can achieve beautiful, vibrant, lively grays for shadow areas in your paintings. Instead of bringing in a ready-made black like a lamp black or Mars black or an ivory black, you can instead create your very own dark color mixtures. The next combination of colors that I'm going to be demoing here is Pyrrole Scarlet plus Undersea Green. Pyrrole Scarlet is a warm red and Undersea Green is a warm green. And as you can see, when I combine these, I am left with this beautiful kind of brownish looking neutral color. Here I'm once again placing the Pyrrole Scarlet on its own on the left and the Undersea Green on its own on the right. And in between these two, there is a vast range of neutralized colors, from neutralized reds on the left to neutralized greens on the right. Do have in mind that Undersea Green from Daniel Smith is already on its own a pretty realistic looking green. All right, moving on to the blue plus orange demos here. First, I am mixing together Prussian Blue and Golden Deep, which is an orange color from St. Petersburg White Knights. Prussian Blue is a cool blue, and Golden Deep is quite warm. Prussian Blue is already green biased, and when I mix it with orange, which obviously has red in it, you'll get a muted, realistic looking green, almost like an olive green. Prussian Blue is a great color for color mixing, especially when you're looking for realistic looking greens, and I would highly recommend exploring it with warm yellows and oranges. I had never mixed these two colors together, but I ended up with a green in the middle that is pretty natural looking, almost like an olive green. Moving on to the next exploration of colors here, I'm going to be combining French Ultramarine, which is a warm blue, with Cadmium Orange, which is once again a very warm color. I end up with a grayish looking color in between. And remember that you're always in full control of the amount of the opposite color that you add into your mixture. If you add in just a bit, you'll just be desaturating that base color just a bit. And if you add more, you get closer to that gray or brown in the middle. Moving on to my third exploration of colors, in which I'm going to be mixing together yellow and purple. First, I'm going to be mixing together New Gamboge, which is a warm yellow, with Ultramarine Violet. I end up with a grayish, brownish looking color in the middle. Do have in mind that as paint dries, it does tend to look lighter and the color sometimes changes a bit. And also, the more watery our color mixtures are, the lighter they're going to look. The lighter and paler the color is going to look. If we're looking for very dark grays or browns, we have to go in with a thicker consistency, more paint, less water. And my next set of two colors is Cadmium Lemon for my yellow, which is a cool yellow, plus Ultramarine Violet. I end up with a similar brownish grayish color. I want to encourage you to try different color mixtures of your own. And now let's explore what happens when we add grays or browns into different colors. Grays or browns are ready-made neutrals that you can reach for to mute down or darken whatever color it is that you wish to mute or darken. When I'm going to be bringing in brown or black to mute or darken a color, it really depends on my subject matter. Sometimes brown will work best, and sometimes gray will work best. And sometimes I go with the colors complementary. It's really a case-by-case scenario. For these explorations, I'm just going to be using 3 primaries, and I have just chosen these colors randomly because I like them. I would recommend doing similar explorations with the colors in your current palette so that you know how they react. I have chosen New Gamboge for my yellow, which is warm biased, Alizarin Crimson for my red, which is cool biased, and French Ultramarine for my blue, which is warm biased. And the top row, I'm going to be filling in with New Gamboge plus brown, which in this case, I have just chosen Burnt Umber for my brown, but you can do these explorations with any brown. The second square I filled in with New Gamboge plus a little bit of burnt umber, and in the third square I'm going to be adding a little bit more of my brown, and then finally a little bit more of my brown. The more brown I add in, the more neutralized the New Gamboge becomes. Moving down to the second row, in this one I'm going to be mixing together New Gamboge plus a little bit of neutral black from St. Petersburg. So in the second square I'm going to be adding just a little bit of that neutral black, and then as I make my way toward the right I'll be adding a little bit more and a little bit more. The greater the amount of black or gray that I add in, the more neutralized the color becomes. Moving on to the alizarin crimson color explorations. The first row is going to be filled in with alizarin crimson plus burnt umber. I'm going to start by adding just a bit into the alizarin, and I'm going to be adding more and more as I make my way toward the right. As you can see, adding just a bit of that burnt umber helps neutralize the alizarin crimson, and the farther down toward the right I get, the more neutralized it becomes. In the second row, I'm going to be mixing alizarin crimson plus a little bit of Payne's gray, which is the gray that I like having in my watercolor palette. Payne's gray is an interesting gray because it is a combination of black plus blue. It is a cool gray, and because the Payne's gray has blue in it, you're going to notice that it not only mutes down the alizarin crimson, but I also get a purplish looking color, which makes sense, right? Because alizarin crimson is a red and Payne's gray has blue in it, and red plus blue equals purple. And this once again goes to show that the temperature of your colors in your mixture have a huge impact on the final results. And this is why it's so important to understand color theory, so that you don't end up creating a color that you don't want in your painting. But this is quite a beautiful muted purple. And finally, I'm mixing together the French ultramarine plus my brown, which in this case is burnt umber, and I'll continue using my Payne's gray for the second mixture with the gray. Alright, so here I am adding a little bit of my burnt umber into my French ultramarine, and you can see how it becomes more muted and also a bit darker. Adding a little bit more of my brown into my French ultramarine, and it becomes even more muted and even darker. And finally adding a little bit more of my brown into my blue, and at this point it looks almost like a gray. And I just want to share that blue plus brown is one of my go-to color combinations when it comes to creating grays when I am painting with watercolor. French ultramarine and browns, whether it's burnt umber, sepia, burnt sienna, they create beautiful, vibrant, lively grays. It's a very versatile color combo as well, because you can add a little bit more brown or a little bit more blue into the mixture depending on the temperature that you're going for. And finally, in this last row, I am combining my French ultramarine with some of my Payne's gray. And as I said before, Payne's gray already has blue in it, so I know that I'm going to arrive at a pretty cool looking gray. Payne's Gray is made differently by different brands, but it's always a combination of 2 or more pigments, black being the base pigment that the other colors are added to. I personally prefer Payne's Gray to, say, an ivory black, Mars black, etc., because it looks less flat, more vibrant, more interesting, precisely because it is already a combination of different pigments. I hope that you've enjoyed this video, that you learned something new, and most of all, that I've inspired you to continue exploring color and color mixing on your own. Always bringing to mind your understanding of the color wheel and color theory and using the colors that you have. I'll leave another video here on screen for you to check out next so that you can continue learning more about